In this lesson, we are having a look at UITableView controller. It has access to a view, and the view for this is called view table. It has rows inside the view, and within the rows we have cells, so table view cells. So now this is how it works. When I scroll on my device, we have the two cells gone off the screen, so they become queued to be reused again. We can dequeue whatever's gone out of the screen and reuse those cells down below. So this prevents having to create the same cells object over and over again. Alright, so this is what I learned, and this is how it works. So we have UITableViewController, which from here you can see is a sub of UIViewController. So it has many behaviors similar, and it conforms to a few classes here. So by confirm, it means that there are methods that we need to implement if we need to achieve some behaviors. It can be initialized using initialize with style. So let's go ahead and write some code. So motion create table is the name of the project. Let's seed into the table and have a look. I'm going to make a directory, app controllers, and create a new file in the controller called contactscontroller.rb. And let's open that up. Okay, so create a new class. So contactscontroller will inherit from or extend UITableViewController. Okay, so this will give us access to a few things. So I'm going to write this out and go to Delegate, change this to our contacts controller, allocate, initialize with style. So we'll have a look here, initialize with style, takes on board UITableView style. So there are two types we could choose from. So if we take the style plain, copy that and paste that in here. Okay, save the work, and everything else is fine, and rake. So this compiles our work for us, and there we have our table view. So table view has a few things. By default we have some rows in there, so we can do more things with that. So if I go into our contacts controller, we are going to work with data source. Go into that. There are a few methods that we must implement. So we have the required ones. So we have number of rows in section. I'll deal with the section in a different lesson. And then we have self for row at index path. So if we go into this one here, we have a method called table view. It takes a parameter, a table view, and a named parameter, number of rows in section. Okay, so let's write some code. So this would be table view parameter, and a named parameter, name number of rows in section. Okay. So I'm going to hard code 5. So this returns 5 to us. So, and the other method is self for row at index path. Again, very similar and has a named parameter. So let's do the same here. Table view, self for row at index path. So this is the index path, the index of the table. Okay, Alright, so this returns a UITableView cell. We want to avoid it returning nil. And to find out how to initialize this, we'll have a look here. Initialize with style and reusable identifier. So this is what we want to use. Reuse identifier here is something I will elaborate on a bit more. So let's go ahead and create our table view cell. Initialize with style, UI table view, cell style. I haven't quite memorized this yet, so I'm still going to have a look and see the different styles. So we'll pass nil for reuse identifier for now. So these are the different styles that we can use. So this is default. I'm going to use that there. Our reuse identifier is nil. I'll explain this in a second. Okay, so now we have a cell object. We can call a method on that. So a text label object.text is a text that will be displayed for that cell, and we'll return the cell and we'll end the method. Okay, so let's run rake and see what happens. And we have hello printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So we know what the methods are doing. So number of rows in section is 5, so that gives us 5. So I'm going to remove the hard code and make it a bit more dynamic. So I'm going to set data. Data will be an array of A to Z. So print all the alphabets between A to Z, convert it to an array. Right, so get rid of the 5, and I can say data, which is an array.count, will give us the number of letters in A to Z, 26. And down here, get rid of that. So go into our data array and print the array for the index. So we'll get the index row like that. Okay. So if I save this and rake and recompiles our context controller, starting, and there we have our alphabet A to Z. Okay, so that's very good. So let's do a bit more work to that. The next thing I want to do is inspect cell.inspect. So let's see exactly what is happening here. Run rake. Alright, so this gives us a few cell objects covering A to N. Okay, and what happens is every time we scroll up, it creates a new cell for us. So if we keep scrolling just up, we'll see that we'll probably end up with 26 cell objects because we have 26 letters. But if I copy this and try and search for it, we see it only comes up once. So this address is unique, so we have 26, which is not very efficient. If we have thousands of rows, we have thousands of unique objects created. So this is where we have the reuse identifier. This is where it comes in. So what I'll do now is create a new cell. So I say table view, first DQ, a cell that we've scrolled out of the screen when we use the scroll. So it's quite a long method. DQ reusable cell with identifier, and we give it an identifier. Okay, so what we do here is just quickly create an identifier here, just cell ID. Okay, so here we are making an identifier. So I'm going to change this nil to be cell ID. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm creating a new cell by reusing an existing cell. But if we don't have a cell to dequeue, then we want to go ahead and create a new UITableView cell. Okay, so on this line we are dequeuing. If there isn't any to dequeue, we then go down this point and return a new cell, which is then saved in our cell object, and we can use that. All right, so save this and run rake just to see that everything is still the same. There shouldn't be any noticeable difference. And we have our A to Z as usual, so as we had it before. All right, but this time around, if we have a look at inspect, so if I say put cell.inspect, write this to disk and rake, and you will see slightly different results. So we have A to Z objects created there. So I'm going to scroll down a few steps. I'll just scroll all the way to the end, actually, it's fine. And if I copy this object ID and search for it, you'll see it has been reused down there. If I copy this and search, it's down there. So we have objects being reused instead of new objects being created each time. So that's the dequeue aspect of it. It's a much more efficient way of saving memory. All right, so that is that for cell for row at index path. Now the next method that we can have a look at is in UITableView cell. Here we have accessory type. Okay, so accessory type has a type, and let's have a look and see how to do that. So if I say cell.accessory type, we'll have a very, here is a different type, so I just copy this one here, a long name, and save that and rake. So accessory type gives us a bit more to interact with. So if we run this, we see what accessory type has done. We have this here, so allows us to click on them and have things happen. All right, so now we want to have a look at a way of clicking on things. So we've handled some data source. So now let's have a look at Delegate Object. So the Delegate Object has a method here, accessory button tapped for row with index path. So we are going to implement this method. There's a table view and it has a named parameter there. So let's do that. Table view, has a table view there. Accessory button tapped for row with index path. That is a very, very long parameter name. All right, so let's just say print tapped on the wrapper. Run rake. Okay, so let's click it. So we notice down here it's tapped. So that method is working. So what we now want to do is create a new controller. So I'm going to create a new controller. I'll call this details controller underscore controller. And let's go into that controller and make a new class, details controller. This extends UI view controller. define view did load, and call your super method. Just want to set the background color. Set the background color to white. The default color, I think it's black, so text wouldn't show up. I'm going to define my own initializer, initialize with letter, and I'm going to set the title for this controller to that letter. Return self, so it's chainable, and class. Alright, so let's go back into contours controller, and this line, I'm going to do a few things. So I'm going to grab hold of the details controller that we just made by saying details controller, allocate memory space, initialize with letter, and the letter is in our array. So I'm going to data, and I give it an index path row. Okay, so now we do what we've done a few times. I'm going to take the details controller and push that into the navigation controller. So there's a few typing details controller. And let's animate that. Animated, set that to true. Okay, so write this to disk and rake. So now when we click here, we'll see that our title is displayed above. Alright, so it's working. So if I now go back into our details controller, I can just put a label in the center of the page. So label, create a new label object. Label el, that's allocate, initialize with frame. So set this to cgrect 0, so by default everything is 0. Label, I have problem spelling label. Set the text to you clicked on, and then we just add the letter in there. Okay, so we want the label size to fit, so it stretches out to match the content within it. And we want to center the label. So the center has X and Y, so the X, I'm going to say, go into the views frame, so that's the frame that this view is being added into. Get the width and divide it by 2, get the height and divide it by 2, so this will center it for us. And the next thing we want to do is SelfView add SubView, and add our label to the SubView. Write this to disk and rake. When we click now, we have, you clicked on C, shows up there. When we click on J, you clicked on J. So everything works fine. So that's, this doesn't cover everything for tables, but it covers a lot of things. So we've seen a few. If I go back in here, so we've done a few things here. We extended UITabBarController, and we've used that way. We've seen some long methods and so on. So that concludes this lesson. I'll see you in the next lesson.